Hello everybody and welcome to 5 books or 5 stars. So thank you Tufty for the title, I really love it. But the concept is I wanted to do one of those this video stops when I reach a 5-star book videos. However, I am very picky, it seems, when it comes to 5 stars, so my fear was that this video would never end. So what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna choose my books to such an extent that I'm assuming or hoping, begging for one of these to be a 5-star read, and I'm giving myself 5 chances to predict a 5-star read. And so either I'm just gonna be reading 5 books or I will actually be finding a 5-star read somewhere within these 5 books. Now I'm definitely going to be reading the 5 books within this video, even if I reach, even if my first one is a 5-star, because if that happens to be the case, we will find out how well I can predict 5 stars by seeing how many out of these 5 make it to that level. But this is a tricky concept because a 5-star read, to my understanding, a lot of times comes from some level of surprise, some level of not expecting a 5-star read out of it, or just like going into it without any sort of real expectations or real understanding of what you're in for. And so with a book surprising me and going above and beyond what I thought it was going to. So going into a book like I'm going to be doing here with the expectation of it potentially be a 5-star might actually ruin its chances of being a 5-star. So we'll have to see. I'm gonna try to still go into the actual reading experience with little to no expectations, but obviously I'm filming them for a reason, so we'll see whether I can actually delude myself well enough or not. Unintentionally, all 5 of the books that I've chosen are translated books. This was not my original intent going into this video, but it happens and we're gonna just roll with it. I only have 4 books here. The 5th book is still on its way, but it's supposed to arrive on the 17th or the 18th, so that would be this weekend, so hopefully that is the case. In any case, I'm not entirely sure I will actually finish the 4 others before that time. They are relatively short, but still. So just for information's sake, I'm gonna go into each book more in detail when I get to them. These are the 4 first ones that I've picked out. So I'm going to be reading The Day the Sun Died by Jan Lienke, The Goodbye Cat by Hiro Arikawa, I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hoffman, and Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. So 4 translated books. 5th one that's coming is also a translated book. I am reading 2, so the one that still needs to come and this one in the original Spanish, which also is a danger for a 5-star rating because my Spanish is good, but it's not good enough maybe, so we'll have to find out. But in any case, 2 out of these 5 authors are authors I've already read from in the past and that I have given other works 5 stars for. And the rest is really just a little bit more of a shot in the dark, based off of other people's reactions or just me thinking it has the potential based on other literature I've read that kind of has a similarity to it, but I'll explain when I get to the individual books. Now, 5 chances at a 5-star. That's not a lot considering I've read 94 books this year and only 4 of them have been 5 stars. So basically 1 in 25. No. 1 in 25, sorry, I was making it sound reasonable, but no, 1 in 25, that's more or less the odds. Just a little above 1 in 25 have been a 5-star read. So I'm going to be reading a 5th of that. So basically I have 0.25%, no, not even 0.2% chance of making this work. But of course, we are going into these specifically because I think that they have that potential. So I'm guessing it's a somewhat elevated odds, though not really. So yeah, I am filming this in my lunch break, so I will get back to you guys this evening when I'm going to be diving into the first one of these to tell you a little bit more about the book, the author, why I think it could be a 5-star read, and to start reading it and hopefully see that 5-star potential getting fulfilled. Alright guys, time to start book number 1 for this vlog, and the first book that I am going to be trying is The Day That the Sun Died by Jan Lienke. So this is a book translated from Chinese. Let me look up the translator's name. And I see we have a translator's note, which I always loved. Translated by Carlos Rojas. It's a very Spanish name, but yeah, Carlos Rojas. So this is a book translated from Chinese, which is part of the reason why I think it is a potential 5-star. I haven't read too many things from Chinese, and I will say that, like, I can think of 2 books at this point in time. One of them I absolutely loved, and the other one I was like, what the hell did I just read? So it's definitely not a guaranteed success, but I did study Chinese for a reason. I am very intrigued and interested in the culture and the history of China. And the one book that I had like a great experience with is a book that very much deals with the history of the Cultural Revolution. The book that I didn't really know what my thoughts about it are is a book that I still don't really know what it was talking about. Potentially it was also talking about something like that, but I just didn't read it into it. And so Jan Lienke is a Chinese author who is also kind of a controversial figure in China, in the sense that he has books that are banned in China as well because of their subject matter. As far as I'm aware, he does still live in China and he continues to work from China. However, as indicated, not all of his works are received there or are allowed to be distributed in there. And so this book, based on its synopsis, I would think is probably also a book that would be banned in China. And so it says the following. Set over the course of one increasingly bizarre night, The Day the Sun Died is a propulsive, darkly sinister tale from a writer heralded as China's most controversial novelist. In a little village nestled in the Balu Mountains, 14-year-old Li Niannian and his parents run a funeral parlor. One evening, he notices a strange occurrence. Instead of preparing for bed, more and more neighbors appear in the streets and fields, carrying on with their daily business as if the sun hadn't already set. Li Niannian watches, mystified. As hundreds of residents are found dreamwalking, they act out a desire they've suppressed during waking hours. Before long, the community devolves into chaos, and it's up to Li Niannian and his parents to save the town before sunrise. Interesting. So a little bit of a low sci-fi novella looking at potentially labor force in China, but also this potentially looking at the culture of censorship and stuff like that. So because of that, it has great potential because it's dealing with social themes, which is something that is like part of the main reason why I like the reading, I guess. In a lot of books, what I really like about it is that it addresses certain social themes, certain societal themes, and this definitely will be doing that. So that is the reason why I'm saying I'm hoping that this one can become a 5-star read. So nothing left for me to do but give it a try. As I indicated, it apparently has a translator's note at the beginning. I always love a translator's note because it just gives you insight into the process of translation, but also oftentimes can kind of help you in setting a book in its context, a book is read in and of itself, but it is not a standalone piece. It is written in a certain context, it is read within a certain context, and a translator's note can kind of help bridge that gap between a reader that is not from the context which originally created this book. So kind of bridging the gap between the, in this case, English-speaking audience and the original Chinese context in which this book was written and for which this book was written. So yeah, I'm gonna be diving in right now, and yeah, we'll check back in when I finished. So I have tried The Day the Sun Died by Jan Lienke, and to some extent lucky because it's not an interesting video concept if the first one is a 5-star. But of course, the intent was for it to be a 5-star. But so, no, this did not end up happening for this book. And it's mainly to do with the writing style. And incidentally, I'm reading another book, not for this vlog, at the same point of time. And I have the same issue with both, which is that I feel like they're told in a very reporting style of writing. So what I typically prefer is a third person narrator who hides inside the head of a character, and this is more of a omniscient third person narrator. He isn't necessarily giving us information about like things. I will put it down just because my shoulder already hurts from holding up the phone. But so while the narrator isn't necessarily talking about events that the characters wouldn't be able to know at that point in time, it is very much just like describing things, describing events and what is unfolding and what is happening, and not really like giving us an insight in the characters' perspective on that. Sure, we will have like a minimal level of insight into the character, but not to the level that I like to have in my book. So I think it was an interesting concept, and it definitely explored some interesting events because we're looking at like people who dreamwalk, and basically as they dreamwalk, basically what it means is that they start to enact their like dreams. Basically whatever they want to do, they will start doing. And so you have people who, for example, just start to confess some of the crimes that they've committed that they thus far have always kept to themselves because of the potential for repercussions. You have like women who all of a sudden become a little bit more like the loose woman type and stuff like that because they want to kind of escape the restrictions that are put on them. And so in general, it's a lot about how people who live in such a restrictive society as China can be, how when they basically have those restrictions taken away for them because of this dreamlike state, of what kind of like can happen and of the behaviors that we then see. And in the background, we have this story of the family that we're following who own a not a funerary parlor, but they basically make like funerary objects. So basically like paper crafts that Chinese people will burn at funerals. And then the brother-in-law of like the person that we're reading from the child from this family, so the brother of the mother figure in this family, he owns a crematorium. And it has been deemed illegal to bury your dead in this village, or maybe in the whole of China, not entirely sure. And as a result, people have had to cremate their loved ones. However, this is not part of their tradition, and so people try to bury illegally. And so what we know as a reader from early on is that the father of this family has actually been, for a long time, he used to tell on the people who were burying their loved ones. So he used to be an informer about these cases. And that will come back throughout the story to kind of play into the dynamics of the town, that whole situation with the informer and with his brother-in-law, who people don't like because of the fact that he charges a whole lot, and because of that whole imposition of using the crematorium to begin with. And another interesting thing I feel like as well is that there is this sort of like reenactment of past historical events, because there are quite a few people whose kind of wish it is for us to turn back to, for example, like the Ming Dynasty time or something like that. And of course, you cannot turn back to that time, but the way that they kind of then enact that wish is to reenact famous sequences from past times. And these sequences also kind of come back to talk about, the dynamics of authoritarianism. And so I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on behind the book, and there's definitely a lot of food for thought. However, the writing style, the way that it was presented, didn't really work for me. And it also, because of that reporting style, it started to feel like it was a lot of the same, which is not the case. It definitely has a huge crescendo towards the ends with like small acts at the begin with smaller individual plots playing out in the beginning of the book, and then crescendoing in sort of like mass events towards the ending, and also in sort of dynamics where the outside world comes into play, because basically this dream walking state only happens within the town itself. And so when news spreads to other towns of what is happening in this town, they kind of come over to this town because they realize that they can start like stealing stuff from stores and stuff like that, or that they can have a good time with the women over here because the women are more open to their advances now. And so there's a lot more going in. There's a lot crescendoing into this book, but it never felt like that because of that writing style that just personally doesn't work for me. So I think for another reader this could perfectly work out well, but it's just not a writing style that I personally enjoy a lot. And also something to bear in mind is that there is definitely trigger warnings for probably much more, because there's definitely also quite a lot of violence towards the ending of this book, but especially for suicide, because some of the first acts that take place within this book is that some of the people who are dreamwalking basically take this opportunity to fulfill their wish of ending their life. And so over the course of this entire book, a lot of people end up dying. So a lot of people end up fulfilling their wishes, and a lot of those wishes end up with either them taking their lives or end up with them dying as a result of foolish actions. But so this one didn't end up being it. I think I will just give it a 3-star rating, because writing obviously has a huge impact on the way that you experience a story. A story is what I wanted to say. And so we are moving on to book number 2, which will be The Goodbye Cat by Hiro Arikawa. Let's not block the cat, right? Beautiful cover. This is, as it says at the top there, from the author of The Traveling Cat Chronicles, which is a book that I gave 5 stars. Now, what is working against this book is that this is a short story collection, or like a novella collection, I guess. I think that there are 4 stories in here. So it's not a super long book, but it's also not like they're gonna be like inconsequential stories neither. So there are 4 stories in here. I'm hoping that they're interconnected, because that is something I really like. And I know from my sister, who has started reading it the last time I saw her, that like the first story in any case does have a link to the original book, The Traveling Cat Chronicles, for example. So will I be as destroyed by this book as I was with Traveling Cat Chronicles by the end? I hope so, because that will increase its chances of being a 5-star. Hello! I am sitting here cozily in front of my laptop because I am going to be editing a video, but I thought it was probably also about time that I update you guys about this 5-star book vlog, because I'm going through things really slowly. But I did finish book number 2. So I finished The Goodbye Cat by Hiro Arikawa. So this is a short story collection by the author of The Traveling Cat Chronicles. And as it was a short story collection, I was already kind of hesitant about its potential to become a 5-star. And I have to say that it did not become a 5-star. Like, it's a 3.5, 3.7 sort of like collection. I definitely enjoyed it. It definitely was like a cozy, fun time. And I especially enjoyed the 2 stories in here that kind of refer back to the Traveling Cat Chronicles, but it did, after all, just like stay like just that. It didn't get to the huge emotional impact that the Traveling Cat Chronicles, for example, has. I have started book number 3, for which I'm going through it even more slowly, though that definitely makes sense, and that is Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. So this, as indicated in the beginning, is in principle translated from Spanish, but I'm reading it in Spanish, and because I'm reading it in Spanish, I'm reading it very slowly. But this one so far is the one that I've been enjoying the most, and that therefore has like potential to actually be a 5-star at this point in time. But as indicated, I'm going through it relatively slowly. I'm like 60 pages in or something like that. It is 200 pages long. So in this one, we're following the mother of she's an elderly lady already to some extent. I'm not entirely sure how old she is actually. And her daughter has just been found after she supposedly committed suicide. However, Elena does not want to accept that explanation. She says, like, no way that she commits suicide. There has to be something else going on. Now, Elena, our protagonist, actually was diagnosed with Parkinson's a little while ago, and so she's also handling and managing that disease while she's now also going about town trying to find answers to the questions she has, trying to prove that her daughter didn't commit suicide. And I really am enjoying it so far. I love the voice in this. I love how it's representing the perspective of somebody with Parkinson's. So we very much zoom in on her and her experience and just how much of an effort it takes for her to be able to, for example, simply get out of a chair. But as I said, I'm like 60 pages in, not far enough in to be able to tell you much more at this point in time. But this one so far has like my biggest sort of like success from the beginning. Like, of course, the other ones I talked about them before I actually even picked them up. This one I've already been through quite a bit with it. But I think like from chapter 1, I already had that feeling like the way in which this was told was really working well for me. So here's hoping that it stays like that, and that I can still find some time for it today, for example, to read a little bit more into it, because I am going to be putting up my Christmas tree today. I need to be editing some. I need to do some work for a Spanish class. So it's been a busy time. I definitely think that this vlog is going to go into December, because I don't see myself finishing this one and 2 other ones still within this month. That ain't happening because we are the 26th of the month. So yeah. Right, guys, so I've just set up the tree. And while doing so, I listened to an audiobook, which actually means that I've started, though I did that yesterday, and finished I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, which sadly, once again, is not a 5-star read. It's pretty close, but I just didn't have that sort of like emotional investment or like feeling of awe with it that leads to a 5-star read. But so in this one, we are looking at a group of 40 women who are locked up in some sort of a facility. The woman that we are reading from is the perspective of somebody who has no memories of what happened before she was stuck in this cage, and so also has no idea about like regular life or anything like that. And yeah, all they know is they are there. They are guarded by these guards who won't allow them, for example, to have physical contact, or you know, like if they like gets hysterical, or like if they were to try to kill themselves, or like refuse to eat anything like that, then they will intervene. But otherwise, they are just there to keep them in there, and they don't interact with them. They never hear them speak. They don't even interact amongst themselves. And so this is all the world that our protagonist has known until, due to circumstances, they at one point get out into a real world that she has never been exposed to. I definitely enjoyed this one a whole lot. I enjoyed the writing style of it. I enjoyed the idea behind it and the whole exploration of this world that has so many new things that she is not aware of. And kind of the vagueness of it all. You never really have answers to any of your questions, but it's very much more about like what makes us human, and about her exploring her humanity, her unique perspective, and kind of for example, in the first half of it, kind of exploring, for example, her burgeoning sexuality. And yeah, I found it really interesting. I'm very happy I read this book, definitely. But unfortunately, it's once again not going to be a 5-star read. So we have to continue further. I have not read anything further in Elena No since yesterday evening, and it's already past 10, so probably today I won't get anything read within that book, but it's fine. I got quite a lot done in this one. It's over 100 pages, I think, that I read in that one today. Yeah, because I think I only was like on page 10 yesterday, so I read like 170 pages or so in that today. So we definitely made decent progress, and then hopefully tomorrow I can get like a decent chunk of Elena Knows done, because I've definitely been enjoying it. I'm just going through it. It's relatively slow because of the Spanish, which is kind of worrisome to some extent because the next book, the final book for this vlog, is also going to be in Spanish. And I think it's also an Argentinian author. So, yeah, I think it'll be the exact same pace in which I'm going to be going through it. So, which probably means that I will only be finishing this vlog in December after all. But so, yeah, now let's give Elena Knows another go. Like, let's hope that this one will be the one to break the streak, that will be the one that will give me that 5-star reads that I've been craving. All right, I am a little bit unsure about what I already talked to you guys about, or what even was my third book at this point in time, but I finished another book, and I finished Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. So this is a book for most of you would be translated from Spanish. I read it in the original Spanish. It is a book about a elderly woman who was diagnosed with Parkinson's like a few months ago or so, and at the beginning of the story, her daughter has just been found dead. Now everybody assumes it's suicide, however, she doesn't want to accept that it's suicide, and so she kind of goes out to look for answers. Basically, most of these events just take place over the course of like a few hours, but then we also kind of go back in time to look at certain events that had an impact on, the history of this household. The main thing that I really enjoyed about this one is its description of dealing with Parkinson's. So all of the sections which are like in present time that see her preparing to go out the door and stuff like that take up a lot of time, because it takes her a lot of time for her body to embrace the medication that she takes and for her to be able to go about a regular day for her. And so I really enjoyed that a whole ton. I also enjoyed the direction that the book took towards the ending. And I'm really hesitating with this one because I kind of want to say it's a 5-star, but I also don't feel like I had that 5-star feeling for it. And I don't know whether that is because of the Spanish, because as a consequence of reading it in a language that I know well, but not like super well, I don't, like in English, I can understand like 99% of the words. There might be like one word that's like so like scientific or whatever that I don't know it, but normally I know all of the words. And with Spanish, that's not the case. So some of the text will go missing because I'm reading the essentials, and some of the details I'm just letting slip by. So I kind of want to be like, this is a 5-star read, but I don't have that sort of 5-star feeling for it. And so I'm like now in that debate of like, do I want to make it a 5-star just because I'm reading it in order to get a 5-star? Or is it actually a 5-star that it like got diminished a little bit because of me reading it in a different language, and one that I'm not fully adept at? But so we will conclude that it is not a 5-star and that it is a 4.5 star. But in any case, very happy with having read this one. Definitely want to read more Claudia Pinheiro, because I know that she has another book that's currently out, but also she has quite a backlist, it seems like. So I do want to read more of her works. And then I'm now currently taking a little bit of break from this vlog before I dive into my 5th book, which is also going to be a Spanish book that I'm going to read in the original language. So is this same scenario going to repeat itself? Potentially. It is 2024, guys, and so I'm continuing this vlog. I should definitely be checking out my video footage for this vlog, because I'm not even sure that I kind of rounded up my experiences with the previous books all that well. I'm not entirely sure. I gave you my thoughts on the last 2 that I read, for example, but I am starting the final one, which is Las Indignas by Agostina Basilica, which has a really great cover. And for this one, actually, so I just knew Agostina Basilica was coming out with a new book, and I was like, say no more, I want it. So I have it in Spanish. It isn't translated yet, and I have never, I feel like, no, never, I'm pretty sure, looked into the premise of this book. And I'm kind of starting to feel like maybe I should, because it's weird, super weird. Starts out page 1 of our protagonist talking about how she pranked one of her roommates, I don't know, by putting cockroaches in her pillowcase and sewing the pillowcase shut so that, they're kind of trapped in there. And, that sets the mood. It seems to be taking place in some sort of like religious institute. Seems like the world has gone to shit, and that she's in this sort of like institute as a way to save herself. Not entirely sure. Las Indignas refers to the unworthy, and so there are multiple class distinctions within this institute, and so the unworthy, of course, are not really at the top, but I feel like they're still above another class, which are more like the servants or something like that, and then you have like three sort of like distinguished classes. However, those classes, even though they're like elevated above the others, they are also like physically mutilated. Like, I'm introduced to only two of these classes so far yet. One of them, they like sew the eye shut. The other one, I feel like they do something to the hearing, or they do something to the ear. Yeah, they puncture the thing in the ear so that they don't hear anymore. So I'm assuming with the third one they will do something with speech. And then there is this sort of like really distinguished class apparently of like the really like the chosen ones who they don't really know too much about. So and that is her goal is to become one of those. And then there's this sort of like mysterious character, which I assume is like the guy running this whole place, who they kind of never see. Only these girls who are part of that like highest category ever get to meet him, and he's always kind of like hiding behind a partition or something like that. All I really know about this so far, but like this starting, like I've read 17 pages of it. These starting 17 pages are like, whoa, okay, what's going on? And I guess if I had read the premise of that beforehand, I would have been more like, oh, okay. Whereas now I'm like, okay, it's gonna be wild. All right, guys. Turns out I didn't film beyond this point at the time. So, which means it's a big problem because this means that I don't have like fresh views on this final book. I think I gave it really either I gave it a 5 star or I gave it really pretty close to it. But the fact that it's kind of already like to some extent disappearing from my memory makes me go like, is it? It's definitely a type of book where I feel like I want to be either rereading it in Spanish or reading it in English. But I had that same sort of experience with Elena Knows because this was a really interesting book, also really weird one. But the vibes were just like immaculate within this one. And within this book we also do like revisit her past. So she is basically like clandestinely writing down her experiences, but also writing down her memories from the world before she made her way into this sort of like religious convent type of situation. And this is like an act of rebellion because you're not supposed to be writing down. If they found out about this, then they would like completely punish her for this. And this is a brutal world. This is a brutal convent, so the punishments would be severe because we do see some very severe punishments take place throughout the novel. So I like that idea of like writing as an act of rebellion, and I like the past experiences that we're revisiting of the outside world and the experiences that she had there, experiences that ultimately also led to her seeking refuge within this convent. However, with the experiences that we have of what the convent life has been like, we definitely see like, maybe there is no safe space on earth. And so I really enjoyed this one. But can I say it's really a 5 star? I feel like it's been too long for me now to have that sort of like certainty about my feelings that I had for it back then. I know I was really excited about it. I know I was really excited about the concept. But I'm guessing my conclusion will have to be that it wasn't. But I think I did give it a 5 stars in the end. But it was a sort of like conflicted 5 stars. It was a 5 stars where I feel like this year I've been much more lenient in my 5 stars, which is also a good thing. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that I'm lowering my standards or whatever. I've been more lenient in calling something a 5 star when it doesn't necessarily give me that overwhelming, oh my god, what did I just read? This was the best thing in the world feeling. I'm allowing myself to give something 5 stars also when I'm like, I really love this one, but it has its flaws, but also when I'm like, this was like really interesting, well thought out, well executed, but am I in love with it? And I feel like this is that type of 5-star, and it might be able to become more if I were to potentially reread it in English because of its contents. It has quite a lot of very difficult vocabulary in Spanish. Vocabulary that I'm definitely not familiar with. I think Elena knows was much easier for me to go through in terms of the vocabulary that it was using, but because this one is set in a much more religious setting, it also means that a lot of the vocabulary being used is vocabulary that just like is a little bit more highbrow, or let's say a little bit more like out there, a little bit more like jargon, stuff that you don't typically teach. And so I did study Spanish at the university. We did learn certain vocabulary like lieutenant and like different ranks in the military that definitely are pretty jargon type of vocabulary, pretty specific vocabulary, but this is not necessarily the vocabulary that has lingered in my mind 10 years later. So yeah, this whole project, I'm guessing we shall say, is somewhat of a success. I had a really good time with 3 out of these 5 books. 2 others were a little bit more run of the mill, but that is to be expected. But I did have a great time with 3 of these, and I did in the end concluded that one of them was a 5-star. But it also had what I knew from the beginning, that sort of like conflict between going into a book looking for a 5-star and that's polluting the experience and making you wonder, am I giving this a 5-star because I'm doing this project? Or would this also have been a 5-star if this would have been just another random book that I'm picking up on a random day just to experience the book? You know, I feel like those expectations kind of pollute the experience to the extent that I'm now, when I'm close to giving something a 5-star in this vlog, I was so conflicted about whether this was actually a 5-star or whether I was just doing it for the sake of the video. So this is a concept that we'll probably never repeat again because of that, but I hope you guys enjoyed it nonetheless. This has taken me forever to edit because I've been in such a funk, but I'm so happy that I'm finally getting this video out there, and I hope you had a good time with it. But so yeah, see you guys for the next one. Bye. But so yeah, see you guys for the next one. But so yeah, see you guys for the next one, guys. Bye.